encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network.
You know what time it is, no matter where you've been. So let's do it again. Listen up and let the sun shine in. We've got soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
And here's Daniel, Alan, and Joe.
Okay, normally I like to start off with something piffy or something cute or something funny or something that maybe captures anybody that's listening, but not so much this time. Everything we talk about is always very serious. As we said in our beginning, soul training is important because all souls are important. Or I think we said training matters because all souls matter. That's the
catchphrase.
That's the catchphrase. So everything we've ever done is important because, we're spending time and someone is taking time, so we don't want to waste their time as they listen. But I don't want to start off with anything cute, funny, or piffy because we're going to talk about mental health in general for different reasons in our society, for personal reasons in our community and in our network of our church family, and then just seems like even in the U.S. that more and more as a culture we struggle with mental health and mental illness, and that's such a broad, huge umbrella. But I'm hoping that we're going to kind of talk about maybe, always anything I'm connected to or anything I try to present or discuss, I always have three questions. Where have we been? Where are we? Where are we going? And where have we been? Maybe we can talk about with mental health over the years, and then where are we and where are we going? And we just want to provide resources, and we're not mental health professionals.
But we know a few mental health professionals.
Zig Ziglar, that was always his lead in. I'm not an expert in this area, but I know people who are. But we do, and so we've done a little research, and we just want to provide some resources and kind of maybe talk about where we've been, where we are, and where we're going with mental health. And that's a broad term, but we're going to do our best to tackle it.
I hadn't talked about it with you guys much, but so we're here getting towards the end of 2024 at this point. So we're 4 years or so out of probably one of the worst years worldwide we've had as citizens of the world, don't you think? 2020 was pretty rough. Lots of loss of life, lockdowns.
You talking about since 2020 or just?
No, the pandemic.
You're saying 2020 was the worst.
It was probably one of the worst years of my life.
And we're still trying to pick up the.
But I wonder how much like PTSD and mental health issues stemmed from all that, from the deaths and the lockdowns and the mass panic and fear. I wonder if we're still dealing with that somewhat, because it does seem like there's a lot of mental health issues right now. And apart from that, like you mentioned, just our own congregation that we attend has had dozens and dozens of folks pass away in the past few months. It's a big figure, including a couple of very hard deaths to deal with. They're all hard, but they've all stung. I'll just say that. They've all stung. So what we did, we've got some other episodes that we've done with Ron and Don Williams. If you all are the people, I guess, if the people aren't familiar with them, look up Ron and Don Williams. Do they have a website, Alan?
I think it's called Ron Don. I think it was called Ron Don Books.
RonDonBooks.com, and that's how you can get in touch with Ron and Don. They're twin brothers from Alabama, but they are absolute experts in grief and mourning and those sorts of things. So RonDonBooks.com will show you.
Yeah, and they do a good seminar as well with that. So if your congregation, especially if you're near northern Alabama, you could really benefit from that.
That's right. So go there if you personally or your congregation feels like you need to speak with some folks. That's a good place to reach out to them.
They do cancer support and dementia support.
Yeah.
In addition to grief and loss counseling.
Yeah. And they don't sound like, well, they're not. It's not a cheerful topic, but I promise you this, these guys will do as good a job as anyone you could imagine at equipping you all or your congregation with dealing with these heavy topics like this. But we don't have them here in studio. We have had them before, so while we're talking about them, go back and check out. It's either season 1 or season 2 that they're in. And
easy to find, though.
Yeah, I think the title of the episode is "Good Grief." I think
it is.
I think you're right. And we had 2 episodes with Dr. Neil Ritchie on mental health issues.
That's true, and those would come later than the Ron and Don Williams. But so I guess now we've got a suite of episodes on mental health. We'll add this to it.
One fell swoop, you can find everything you want right there.
Yeah. Okay. So where are we going to kick this off, Alan? Daniel?
Well, and Daniel, you go. I was just going to say, for me, and I shared this earlier in another setting Joe and I were in, that when it comes to mental health challenges, suffering, and all those things, I would direct people to, and we're not going to read any of those verses. I'm just going to tell you what chapter. Genesis 3. We know that that's the temptation and fall of man. So when we realize that we are living in an imperfect world, a fallen world, a world that has problems and struggles, then I think that helps me understand, let's just go ahead and accept that we've got some battles here, some challenges, because this has been going on for a long, long time. So
you're talking about mental health overall.
Mental health overall. I mean, mental health is real. We're pro mental health support. We're pro all those things. But when you realize one of the reason why we have something, everything from physical health failing to mental health failing to emotional health failing, is because we're living in a world that is failing, which is, we find that in Genesis chapter 3. And we're dealing with the consequences of the choices of Adam and Eve. And that's all documented in history, and it's also documented in Scripture in Genesis 3. So when I realize the cause of something, then that helps me to better understand it, if that makes sense. Does it make sense to you, Daniel?
Yeah, sure it does. And that is the root cause. And as we're dealing with it, I think part of the main purpose of this episode is to think about how we can help our loved ones dealing with grief or other similar types of crises. That I think we're going to probably offer some practical suggestions, and hopefully those practical things will help out. But it all needs to come from a place of genuine, authentic love. You can't fake that, and any effort to act loving that isn't sincere is going to come across as fake and isn't going to be as helpful as we really want it to. And the practical suggestions we'll have really are just ways that we can show that the love that we have for the person that is grieving. But the bottom line is they're going to need just to know that they matter. They need to know that people care, that they're in pain. They need to know that people remember after that first week, that they remember they're still in pain, even though everybody else's life is going on. I think you mentioned that our congregation has had dozens of deaths in recent months. But for those close family members, the loss of their loved one, the one that's in their immediate family, the one that was very close to them, the one that was their mentor or good friend or whatever, that doesn't get obscured by the dozen deaths that came after that. That's still very, very important to them. And as a church family, we don't want to let that person get lost in the I guess crowd of others that are grieving. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So okay. So here's what I think we should do with the remaining moments of time we have. Alan reached out to Ron Williams, and Ron gave a few suggestions. So I'm going to read these. Should I read them and then you elaborate, Alan?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So here are Ron's suggestions, and this is specifically talking about in congregations. So if there's a death in a congregation, someone in my congregation passed away, and they have family members left, what can I do to help those remaining family members, the survivors, if you will? And Ron says, number one, reach out to the family and ask them what 3 things the congregation can do for them right now. And in parentheses, he says, or later on if they're still in shock from whatever loss they had. So apparently we learned a couple things here. First thing to me is you can do this maybe a couple of times. You can ask them right away, but there's a chance they'll be in shock and won't have their thoughts collected. And so you can ask them if they can't think of anything. Well, then a day or 2 later, you can ask them again. And that's okay. What do you think?
Well, I like his suggestion here of,
Well, I was just going to go down his list.
Oh, okay. You're going to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought you'd provide color commentary.
Okay. You mean provide color commentary to the first one?
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I was waiting on. I'm not a professional, Joe. Okay, I'm an amateur.
Well, I don't think we have to tell everybody.
They picked up on that. Thank you, Joe. But as far as reaching out to a family, I think, something Ron Don taught me a long time ago was you don't have to say a whole lot, just your presence. But there are things to do. There is a business side. All of us know that if we're talking about, the immediate untimely death of someone, when I was 17 years old and my father died, I didn't realize that I had to go make arrangements. I just didn't know. And I didn't know that you had to go buy a plot. Go on and on. So that's something that you might send somebody who's seasoned and, has a relationship with them. Say, hey, what can we do? Maybe even, depending on the size of your community. I mean, we're in rural Kentucky. I know both of the people who work at the funeral homes. I may go to the funeral director and just say, look, I know that they're in disarray. Tell me some things that we can do to help them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, is just find a way to create an inroad. Because there is, like I said, there is a business side to that. It just is.
Something else Ron says next on his list is have a care team provide meals for a month on some kind of rotation, if that would be helpful. And I know
we have hot meals
here at South Green where we attend. We have some teams that do that, and I've been on the receiving end of that before, and it is so helpful and so nice. I heard James Gregory one time. That's what we do in the South. Have you heard this?
I know who he is.
Where he says in the South we comfort each other.
It kind of reminds me of Lou Holtz.
Yeah, maybe a little. Yeah, but he says, "Sorry to hear about your brother-in-law. Here's some baked beans. Hope that's okay." Yeah, but it does. Where we live, it helps to have that food, and so it helps for a bunch of reasons. One, it's comforting. Somebody's out there doing what they can for you. It's one less thing you have to worry about. And so that's nice to have some food. He says do it for a month, though. That seems like a long time.
Well, just 2 things. I mean, we have, care teams. We don't call them care teams, but I get to work with those groups, and we have each month we have a different group of folks, and you have a leader, and they just spring it. I mean, they're like SEAL Team 6 or Delta Force. I mean, they spring right into action. They got somebody on rolls. They got somebody on tater salad. They've got somebody, and so that's a well-oiled machine. Yeah. But then something we do too is we provide either a meal after a funeral, or we'll take sandwiches, a sandwich tray or something to the funeral, the funeral home. So you're getting fed immediately, and then afterwards, then you have people who check on them too.
Yeah. Coming on down the list, it says have minister, elder, deacon, church member team visit with them and assure them the congregation will be there for them. And then fortunes in the
Follow-up.
follow-up.
I've heard that.
And then you have to be there for them. If you say, I'll be here for you. Well, then you got to be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And listen to them about what they need, what being there for them means. But that seems self-explanatory, but anybody ever told you, well, I'll be praying for you? And you really question, are you really praying? I mean, I hate to be like that, but sometimes that's a phrase that's thrown out there, and people don't pray for folks that they say they're praying for.
They mean it, and it comes from a good way. But
that's right.
And I think just from a church, a congregation standpoint, you gotta be able to have somebody to tell somebody to go do something. You ever had a CPR class, Daniel or Joe?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned in CPR is years ago, the American Heart Association, all these people realized that if someone falls out in a crowd, then you would hear somebody say, someone call 911. Well, nobody ever calls 911. So they finally learned that you point to someone and say, you call 911, and people react to that. So 911 gets called. So you need to have someone in a position in your congregation. Hey, you're taking food, right? You go take the food. You go do this and follow up with me. You go do that. So leadership.
Can I tell you a story?
Sure, I love stories.
One time, so I saved a guy's life one time at a Mexican restaurant.
Really?
Yeah. I'll tell you all about it after, off the air.
I like to hear it now.
I'll tell you most of it.
I don't like suspense.
Anyhow, I happen to know the couple sitting next to us, and I was sitting down as after church, and we were sitting down, and we had just ordered, and I was eating some chips, and then I hear somebody screaming my name. And it
Big
was
Show. They say Big Show, Big Show.
They didn't say Big Show. They
Big
just
Show.
said Joe. And so I looked, and this lady was there, and her husband was standing up, and she said, he can't breathe. Well, if someone screams your name in a crowded restaurant and says that their husband can't breathe, well, then I had no choice but to get up and try to do something.
Well, sure, you had your
And
cape
so,
on.
Right.
So I got up and I did the Heimlich, what I remembered of the Heimlich, and I dislodged the food.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
What city was
Way to
it?
go.
It's here, man.
Here, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
You probably know the people.
They put you on the Christmas card list, I bet.
You know what they did? They sent me a bag of Lifesavers in the mail, and I thought that's cute.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do anything, but it was it all happened so fast. It was kind of like watching a movie that I didn't even think about reacting. But you're right. I wonder if she had said, "Someone help," then there would have been a hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think I would have got up and done it anyhow. But since she was yelling my name,
She said you.
she said she called me out.
Exactly. You know, just as a side note, I was on the other side. I was choking once when I was about 6 years old. I was in the back seat of my parents' car. We didn't have to wear seat belts, and we were riding through the country, going up and down hills. And I'd found a glass Coke bottle that had a marble inside of it. So every time we would go over a hill, I would act like I would do the drinking motion, and I would spit the marble back out in the bottle. Well, my dad hit a pothole, and I swallowed the marble, and I was given the choke sign in the rearview mirror. And my dad didn't do the Heimlich. He just got out on the side of the road and just kind of did like some haymakers on my back and just, pretty much beat it out of me.
And it worked. That's what you got to do.
Beat it out of me, So,
He beat you until you lost your marbles? Is that what you're saying?
Until I lost my marble. I didn't like marbles for a long time.
I wasn't expecting many dad jokes on this episode, but lo and behold, one snuck in there.
Hey, so that's good, Joe. Somebody,
Well,
you.
and I'm trying to relate. This is not about me. This is our grief episode.
It is
so
about you,
let's
I think.
I'll tell you the rest later.
Oh, man. I can't wait.
So another suggestion that Ron says is use gift cards to favorite restaurants or close by restaurants that the family might might be able to use during and after the loss. And he mentions a lot here about after the loss, a month long, do this.
Sure.
It's real easy to go to someone after they've lost a spouse or child or whatever right then. But we got to remember those folks. Remember them down the line because
you think about you, Daniel and Joe, you personally, people you've lost in your life, do you still think about them?
Yeah.
All the time?
Yeah.
I do
Of
too.
course.
I mean, so it never goes away.
I know holidays, birthdays, those sorts of things are hard. It says write cards of love. Anyone can text, but meaningful cards of love really do mean so much. But wait for 2 weeks before sending these, since others will send them right away after some loss and then forget them. And so Ron's saying, wait, be patient. He doesn't say you can't reach out to them right then too, but send some cards a little bit down the line. Let them know that they're still being thought of. They're still being prayed for. And we didn't even mention pray for them. That's something that you can do. We ought to be praying all the time anyhow. So just add them in there.
Mention the text too. I mean, I know we're all busy, but
Oh, man.
one of the
Any of our dear listeners would like to get texts from Alan, just send us your number. He'll text you.
just email.
soultrainingpodcast@gmail.com.
There was a gentleman that his wife had Alzheimer's he took care of her at home, and me and another gentleman went to visit him, and he told us, he said a card is okay. He said a text is not bad. A phone call is good, but he said a visit is the best.
A visit's the best. And this next suggestion, Don's got one about checking on the kids of the family. Be sure they're being loved and cared for while, the adults might be taking care of some things. Make sure the kids are cared for. But he also says, have someone that can and will say, when you need to go and take care of all the after-loss situation, I want to drive you, be your chauffeur that day, or however you might be needed. And it's something you don't think of, but just being there,
And I know this is drilling way too deep, but I've learned through loss I've had that even down to utilities, if someone passes away, you got to go get utilities switched over. You got to do a lot of those things. It'd be good to have somebody to help you see about all of those things, and it's still hard.
Well, Daniel, you still with us? I think we might have lost Daniel for a second. We'll keep going, and he'll jump back in. We've only got just a couple more minutes. So let's give, what do you think, two more, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
This one's a really interesting one, I think. If you've got a friend or a loved one that has lost someone in their life, it says have volunteers come and help write sympathy acknowledgement cards with them. So I guess this is saying like the thank you notes, right? If somebody sends flowers or makes a hot meal and gives that to you, folks like to send a thank you card, but that can be overwhelming. If you've received all this love, that's a great thing, but then you feel the obligation and the indebtedness to write those thank you notes. It would be nice if you had a hand in writing those. So offer to go help write those notes.
And you got one more, right?
Yeah, I'll do one more, but what are you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, and you said you don't mean to over-relate, and I don't either, but we all draw from our experiences. I don't know if this helps. But you talked about Ron kept saying the after, follow up after and all those things. When my father died unexpectedly, when I was a senior in high school, of course, little small town, small school, everybody knew my family and all those things. And literally for about a month, there was somebody bringing, the first couple of weeks was heavy, bringing food, people coming by, checking on us. I mean, it went on for then it faded a little bit, and it was almost a month. And then finally I got up one day, and I was just mad. I was a teenager, young, but I was just mad. I was like, where's everybody, Mom? Somebody's supposed to be here checking on us. And she just said, people had to get back to their lives. And I was really mad about that for a day or two. But it made me realize that, that follow-up is important. And it would have been and people were just trying to be helpful. They were so helpful. But it just would have been nice if maybe some people could have strung it out a little bit. And we still had people checking on us. So. Yeah. Anyway, be careful with the initial wave sometime.
Right. I think that's what you got to be thinking about. Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
Kind of thinking about a couple of things that have been said, thinking about the follow-up, but also going back to your story about saving the guy in the restaurant. It got me to thinking that call to action helped you spring into action and do something that needed to be done. And when you were doing that, you probably weren't thinking about whatever it was you were thinking about immediately before. Like if your food was a little cold, or if whatever else was on your mind, you weren't thinking about that because you had a purpose. You had a new focus. Well, thinking about the follow-up after it's been a little while, especially if somebody has lost somebody that's a part of their daily life, a spouse, a child, somebody that is a daily impact, they may need something to help fill that void. They may need a new way to be involved. And so looking to get them involved in some other act of service, forcing them to look outside of their self and outside of their own grief may be a way to help them re-regulate a new normal and begin to adjust to a life that has purpose outside of their own pain.
Yeah, I can see that. Maybe they turn around and take their experiences and they help someone else going through that later on. Once there's been enough time pass. Also, Alan, we were talking earlier about the power of exercise. Mm-hmm. Alan's on a health journey. He's in here looking like Lou Ferrigno. He mentioned earlier tonight in class.
The Incredible Hulk.
But I think there's power in just saying, hey, it's a pretty day. I was thinking about going for a walk. You want to go for a walk with me? And I think most people who are dealing with loss might appreciate that. You can shoot the breeze, you can walk, you can be outside. Fresh air does a number of things for you.
I think just exercise in general. I mean, it's something that I found in my new. I've kind of gone in waves as an adult with exercise and health, but I don't know. As far as loss, I mean, getting people involved. I'll get back to that, but fight the isolation. If I had to say, fight the isolation. You don't want to. There's sometimes you don't want to be around people. You don't have to be around a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But like you said, find some way to get out and to help somebody. Be involved, whether it's exercise, any of those things. I know I'm thinking about pushing yourself. I know in my health journey, push yourself to kind of. You learn a lot about yourself. You can learn about resilience, things I had shared with you all, stress management, discipline, all those things that you didn't have to be necessarily with exercise, but find something to fight the isolation and to find, like what Daniel said, the purpose. There's a gentleman here in our congregation who literally, I've heard his story, really should not be here with us today. He had a brain aneurysm a long time ago, and the doctor was ready to just stop everything, but his wife fought for him in the hospital and says, you got to take him somewhere else. We need him in our life. And the doctor listened and got him to a little bigger hospital with some more resources. And the guy ended up pulling through it. But he told me after he got well, he said that the doctor told him, to Daniel's point, he said, something that's going to help you recover from this emotionally is you need to go to nursing homes and volunteer. And he said that will help you recover and help you on your journey. Now, I don't know the total premise behind that, but he was fighting the isolation. So I would, whether it's exercise, exercise is a good place to start early before something happens, but just, fight the isolation. That's like the 12th time I've said that, but that's why it's important to me.
All right. Well, let's do one more suggestion from Brother Ron, and then we're going to have to wrap things up because the people got other things to do. Other less important podcasts to listen to, we'll say, okay? So last suggestion is don't minimize whatever loss they had or what might have seen might seem to be a lesser loss, might just be the opposite with members of that family. So maybe somebody's dog died.
Well, that's what I was going to get. We've talked a lot about humans, and Daniel, I know we're trying to keep him plugged in here literally in another state, but that's what I was thinking about. We've spent so much time talking about human loss. I've never, and don't call PETA on me or anything like that. I'm not a pet lover. I'm just not. I'm not. Okay. I'm not.
That's okay.
But I'm not a pet hater either. Okay. But after having 2 children who now are adults, we've had our share of puppies at home, and we've had to say goodbye to our share of dogs for, different reasons. Yeah. And so that's helped me understand and let me have some empathy, towards, I know folks, and you do too, who maybe their spouse died 10 years ago and their pet has helped them
That's their companion.
That's their companion, but then their pet passes away. Yeah, so that's why it may not be important to you or me. But it's important to them, and that's something that parenting has taught me. So be empathetic, and it could also, here again, this is Ron and Don. I don't want to get in their lane, but they talk a lot about even down to the loss of a job. Yeah, causing grief. It's important to them. You still have your job. Well, they lost their job. Don't minimize. Don't say it's going to be okay. Yeah. I mean, don't say it's not going to be okay. But I mean, just don't take their grief from them. Yeah. That's the punchline.
So that's about all the time that we have for today. I want to plug Ron and Don Williams once again. They were kind enough to reply back to us when we reached out to them. So thank you to Ron and Don. Check out their website, rondonbooks.com, for more resources, and there's ways to contact them there, I believe. If you'd like a seminar for your congregation, they'd love to do that because they're all about helping folks out with these issues.
If they email you, the people, we can get you all their
information. The people can email me, and I'll connect folks together.
We tell them about the Incredible Hulk if they ask you, if anybody out there that doesn't know.
What are you talking about?
Hulk.
Lou Ferrigno.
Oh, well, yeah, Lou Ferrigno was the Incredible Hulk like 75 years ago. Yeah,
Bill Bixby was the guy who...
I don't care.
Bill Bixby? Okay.
I just don't care. I don't know him. No, I'm sure Mr. Bixby's a wonderful fella. Is he still with us? No. Well, I'll never have the pleasure, I guess.
You can watch him on YouTube.
YouTube. So, Daniel, you think your internet's strong enough to take us home?
Well, we'll give it a shot.
Okay.
So I'll try to make it quick. Thank you, dear listener, for letting us be a part of your spiritual journey, especially if you're dealing with grief or trying to show love to someone who is. If you've got some ideas, we'd love to hear them. Email us about it, or if you have a question or another topic. So thank you. And we want to thank the elders at the South Green Street Church of Christ for making soul training possible. We want to thank our new friends at the Light Network. And on behalf of Alan and Joe, I'm Daniel. Until next time, keep soul training.
Got soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
To learn more, you can email us at soultrainingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can write to us, P.O. Box 503, Glasgow, Kentucky, 42142. That's Soul Training.